I'd always kind of thought, kind of feel like I've got a book in me. And then, I had this idea about exploring the revolution. And so I sat down on, actually, it's a heck of a story. I'm Lars Hedbor. I am the leading novelist of the American Revolution with 19 books in print. Each of my novels is based in a different colony or future state, and they all focus on telling the stories of ordinary people. I started writing about the American Revolution in large part because, first of all, there's an enormous literature of the Civil War in the U.S. Commercially, historical fiction, what's popular and successful is Civil War and World War II. The Civil War is tremendously important in American history, but I think that the American Revolution is a turning point in all of human history. And for that to have so little literature about it really bothered me. And where I actually started was a friend of mine who went to school at Clemson, kept going on about all the stuff that had happened in the Carolinas during the Revolution. And I'd love to know more, but I learn history best through well-researched and well-written historical fiction. And he looked around and he said, oh, well, it looks like Jimmy Carter actually wrote one. I was like, okay, well, he's a heck of a poet. I really love his poetry. I'll go ahead and pick it up. And I want to say this carefully. A Baptist preacher probably should not explore the sexual lives of his characters. I got about 100 pages in, and I reached a passage where Carter was trying to do that in kind of a delicate, sideways sort of way, and it was difficult to read. And I literally put the book down and I uttered those famous last words: "I think I could do better myself." And here I am, a million words later, and 19 books later, having done what I think is quite a bit better. The Revolution deserved somebody really focusing on it. So I got started in 2008. 2008 was a tough year for me. I was going through a divorce. I had declared bankruptcy, and I was just waiting for my foreclosure to complete. It was not a good year. In November of that year was National Novel Writing Month. And I'd always kind of thought, kind of feel like I've got a book in me. And then, I had this idea about exploring the revolution. And so I sat down on, actually, it's a heck of a story. My very first night of writing, I had agreed to get together with some people at my kids' school to do what they call a write-in. Starting right at midnight, you start writing. And so I had agreed to go over to the school and meet with them. I got to the school and found that it was locked and dark, and looking at my phone, which was the old flip phone that had about 2 seconds of life left in it, and found that they had texted and said, oh yeah, we're going to this other location. I said, great, I'm heading over there. Went back to my car and found that I'd locked the keys in the car, because divorce, bankruptcy, foreclosure, your brain doesn't work very well in those circumstances. And that was like the third time that year I had locked myself out of the car. But it was 11 o'clock at night. I had my favorite keyboard with me. I stashed the keyboard under the stairs of the school and took the laptop and started walking home. It was only about 15 miles, but it's remarkable how long 15 miles is. If you're used to just driving it and it's 15-minute drive, okay, no big deal. Wow, it's a long walk. And I got to a point where the only way over the Clackamas River was on the interstate. And I was kind of going, okay, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And as I'm trudging through the darkness, I passed by a cop who was doing a speed trap, and he kind of watched me go by, and he pulled up behind me and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just trying to get home. I locked myself out of my car." And I explained where I needed to go and asked him, asked his advice. Is there any way for me to get across without going on the bridge? He says, well, you could loop back and take this other road, but that's a heck of a long way. Would it help you if I gave you a ride? I said, yes, absolutely. So I got frisked because he wanted to make sure I didn't have anything with me that was going to hurt him. And I ended up in the back of a cop car, which I do not recommend. They are cramped and uncomfortable. The seats are made of hard plastic so that if you throw up or whatever on them, they can just hose it out and on they go. This very nice policeman gave me a ride, not all the way home, but close enough that I was able to make it the rest of the way. Got home about 1 o'clock. My ex-wife was still home at that point, and she gave me a ride back to the car with the key, got the key, drove back home, and then sat down and said, okay, look, if I can write tonight and I can hit my word count, I will never have an excuse. Never, ever, no matter how much I write in my life, I will never have an excuse for not making my words. So I sat down and I made my words that night. And that was the first 2,000 or so words of the Declaration, which is my very first book. The agreement that I have with my wife is that she is a widow during the month of November. The rest of the year, outside of doing all the rest of book publishing, I'm hers. I did mess up one year. A friend of mine sent me a news article about a mayor in North Carolina who had done some genealogical research, and like many of us, he discovered that he had an ancestor who had fought in the Revolution. Unlike most of us, that ancestor was formerly enslaved. And I just immediately said, oh my gosh, that's a story that I've got to tell. Maybe I'm not the right person to tell it, but it hasn't been written before, and I'd rather it be told imperfectly than continue to not be told. The fact that there were men who had been enslaved, who fought for the American Revolution, just completely blew my mind. So I sat down to write some notes, just to get some ideas down. And 3 chapters later, I had to go to my wife and confess, I'm really sorry. I accidentally started writing a book. And that was in April. So I was in trouble that year. But it's turned out to be probably my favorite book of the entire series, just because, again, the underlying story, the historical facts are so compelling. The idea that somebody who had spent their life as property would look at this country, look at the ideals of this country and say, I'm going to put my life on the line for that. The foresight that took to either envision a future in which those rights, those freedoms would be extended to their descendants, or to say, I don't care if I never benefit from it, this is still worth fighting for. Either way, it just absolutely gives me chills that there were men who did that. And to get to write that story and in some way try to represent their experience is actually one of the great honors of my writing career so far. So right now, it's May, and I'm just wrapping up edits on my last book, which means I'm already starting to look ahead to what the next book is. I haven't really started doing a whole lot of research for it. I've put together a few pieces of information that I am going to be studying. I've bought a few books and so forth. The process of writing these books so far has, first of all, deepened my respect for the men and women who made this country happen, who brought this country into being. And it wasn't all just the names that we study in our history books. It was the men and women who did the work. And it's not to say that the great leaders weren't great. Many of them were. Many of them were venal. They were terrible human beings who we wouldn't want to have at a dinner table. But the everyday heroism of the ordinary people who, and we see this today too, right? When something needs to be done, they jump in and they get it done. The fact that we can see that common thread going all the way back to the very beginning of the United States of America, we can see this. One of the things that, I host exchange students. That's one of the other things that I do. One of the things that my exchange students comment on, that my other overseas friends comment on, is the degree to which the United States is so much of it is driven by volunteerism, people jumping in and volunteering or donating when they see something that's gone wrong. And that goes all the way back to the foundation. And it is, we take it for granted, and it is actually something unusual about the United States. And it's something that I think is worth being proud of, and it's worth celebrating. But one of the things that struck me a couple years ago, I had written a book about the Siege of Savannah, which we don't read very much about in our history books because we lost, and we lost very badly. We had a force of Americans and French soldiers, many of whom were free black men from what is today Haiti. At that time it was Saint-Domingue. And they were literally blown to pieces. The accounts that I read of the aftermath of that battle were absolutely horrifying. I don't usually write a lot of bloodshed in my books. I felt like I had to reflect that experience and honor the men who had given their lives there. So I did write about it. And then afterwards, a couple years after I wrote that, I went to a concert to watch one of my very favorite pieces of music in the world, which is the Holt's Planet Suite. And the first movement of that, the Mars movement, even if you don't know it by name, you probably would know it if you heard it. It's a da-da-da-dun, dun, 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 da-da-da-dun, dun, 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 dun. So it's this big martial piece of music, in your face, and I love it. And then it shifts over to this quieter section. And for the first time, I listened to that quieter section, and I realized what it was. It's the aftermath. It's the men groaning their last, dying. It's the people coming out trying to rescue them, mourning and sobbing. And that piece of music that I used to just enjoy, and yay, it's my favorite piece of music, it makes me cry now. So in many ways, the journey of writing these books has made me much more, first of all, much more grateful for the country that we live in and the intent behind it that we still live to this day. Even with our imperfections, even with our struggles, we're still, in many, many ways, we're still holding true to those intents. So I grew up in Vermont. My bedroom window literally overlooked Valcour Island on Lake Champlain, which is one of the key settings of my Vermont book. It's right there at Valcour Island. Of course, I grew up hearing some of those local legends and so forth, and those make it into my book, my books that are set in those places. But about a little bit over 30 years ago, I ended up getting a job opportunity out here in Oregon, and met a wonderful third-generation Oregonian. And so this is where I live now, no matter how inconvenient it is for me as a novelist of the Revolution. Do I wish that I could travel more frequently to the East Coast? Absolutely. But at the same time, the incredible wealth of sources that are available to anybody online is just amazing. The thing that I want my readers to come away with is, first of all, an appreciation of just how complex and rich the American foundation was. But again, also that sense that what we do matters. And it matters in ways that we cannot even begin to envision, and in ways that future historians will kind of sweep under the rug, because that's the people. That's not one of the big figures who gets their name in the newspapers every day. But at the end of the day, what we do, those great figures cannot accomplish the things that they're trying to accomplish without the daily contributions of people just like you and me.